Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Julie Livingston of Want Leverage Communications, the public relations and LinkedIn consultancy, here for another episode of PR Patter, my semi-weekly show where I talk to the amazing people from across my public relations and marketing network. If you like what you see today, download my free tip sheet. Make your C-suite stand out on LinkedIn on my website, which is wantleverage.com. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Mimi Banks. She's president of MB Social. Mimi has more than 2 decades of global experience in the beauty industry in the United States, France, and Israel. She spent most of her career at L'Oreal, where she led social media for the Lancome brand. A forward thinking and results driven social media expert, she believes in community building and results driven social media through storytelling, authentic and compelling content, and real relationships. So, welcome, Mimi.
Thank you so much.
Tell me a little bit more about your backstory. How did you get into the beauty industry?
Oh, how did I get into the beauty industry? It
Yeah,
probably started by visiting a Clinique counter when I was very young with my aunt and really taking a liking to it, putting makeup on my sisters. And I was just super passionate. And when I was finishing grad school, I was looking for a job. And someone said to me, "Well, you speak French. Did you ever think about L'Oreal?" And then the rest was history.
that's great. That's awesome. So you've worked across the beauty industry. How do brands create a solid online community, even if they're starting from scratch?
It's a very big question. It's a very it's really an art and a science. It's understanding, I think, social media from first and foremost, understanding what your audience wants and how to talk to them. So sometimes it's trial and error. There's a lot of testing and learning, but first and foremost, it's understanding how you communicate an effective way for me, on social media.
Okay. What are the elements of a successful online community? How do you know you've kind of gotten there?
I think how you've gotten there is if the community starts to engage of itself. So that means you're creating content or sharing content. They're engaging with your content in a real way. It's not just people hitting the like button. It's not just people dropping emojis, but really telling heartfelt stories, responding to your comments and responding to each other. In some cases, they start to give each other names. So, for example, some brands, um, it Cosmetics used to have it like at the time a while ago, it was the It Girls. And so you start to see people creating their own names for their community.
That's very cool. That's very cool. How do brands build trust through community building? I guess that's sort of the baseline of building a
It
community.
is a baseline, but
Yeah,
I think that they're letting them know that there is a real person behind the scenes to answer the questions in a real and authentic way, to not just placate them with answers or the copy paste mentality, but to interact as a human. So, for example, I recently, and this isn't even a brand, I reached out to a children's creator who my 18-month-old daughter watches, and I immediately went to her Instagram because we just found her. I wanted to learn more about her. And I saw on Instagram that there wasn't much activity there. And so I reached out to better understand her. And the person back and forth was a human, and we had this great exchange. And now I've become part of her community because of the way that she engaged me.
right. So if she didn't answer you or, was just non-responsive, that would have changed maybe how you felt about the brand.
Completely. It would have been a very big turnoff. There's been several instances, I think, that people become um, a fan because of their interaction with the brand, because they've seen how they're treated, because they've seen how customers or potential consumers you haven't even tried it interact. For example, this is again many years ago, but I've always been impressed by the Four Seasons, and I love going to hotels for many reasons, but I love looking at the products in the bathroom. And so when I got to the Four Seasons in California for my sister's wedding, I went into the bathroom to see what the products were. And working in beauty, I can't really, I didn't want to complain. I didn't want to say, but I was hoping for different products. And I think I mentioned something about being excited to be at the Four Seasons, and this was through Twitter at the time. And essentially, I came back into my hotel room, and all of a sudden, there is this beautiful line of Bulgari green tea products saying, "Hey, Mimi, we saw your tweet." And to me,
That is outstanding.
it's absolutely one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's like 1 in a million, right?
Mhm.
I mean, how many brands really do that?
Right, exactly. And then like I wanted to meet the social person because it's really interesting to understand who they are, what their ethos is, and that starts with the brand, that the brand really believes in their community. They really believe not just in customer service, but they value the opinions of their community.
Wow. So you have a number of community managers on your team. How do they work, and how does the brand engage properly with the community manager to get things rolling?
So we actually specialize in community management. We work with a number of beauty brands on the back end to make sure the community is engaged. And what we do is we ensure that we understand the brand inside and out, the tone of voice, the priorities, the products, and who their consumer is. And what our community managers do is their goal is to make sure that everyone's voice is heard. So it's the same ethos that we practice or that we believe in is always aim for 100% response rate. We look at who's responding. We flag questions, concerns, opportunities, wins to the client to make sure that they're as in touch with the community as possible.
That's great. And so how would you say a client should interact with their community manager to make sure that, communications is regular and very, very clear, that they're all on the same page?
I think the closer that you are with your community management team, the stronger that you are, because now people go to social to complain or to celebrate. So the more questions that you ask, the more touch points that you have, even the learnings, because there could be something that people are talking about in the community that wasn't on your radar. Maybe it's a product hack. I'm speaking in the world of beauty. Maybe it's a product hack. Maybe it's an ingredient they love.
Right.
Maybe it's a new formula. Maybe it's a way in which that they're experiencing the product that the marketer hasn't even thought about. And so it's keeping in touch with that community manager to know what the interests are of the community, and also just staying close to make sure that the community's needs are being met.
Right. What does a great program look like for you? Maybe you could share a couple of case studies with us?
From a community management perspective,
Yeah.
oh, that's a very good question. I think, we work with a number of brands on community management, and I think the best cases have been where everything is integrated. So we do a lot of work with the Lancome brand, and whatever launch or program that they're working on, we're in lockstep with their team. So when something goes live, they make sure to let us know. We have tons of planning calls beforehand. We look at the tone of voice. We look at the people that we want to look out for. Also, that we know who the influencers are. So if a brand is doing a big campaign, make sure your community management team knows the influencers, who to look out for. It might seem obvious, but when there's so many different teams working on a big campaign,
Mm,
the communication, there could be like levels of assumption, like you don't know what people don't know. So the more that you can have that cross channel, cross functional conversation, the better. So again, going back to Lancome, is that we're in lockstep, understanding what their launches are, understanding when they're seeding, when they're doing send outs, or if somebody happens to mention Lancome or something, that will send it to them. And so to really stay in tune with what's happening, I would call it even like on the ground, because right, we're really in the field here, and like what their plans are. So to make sure that everything meets the objectives.
so you get a lot of feedback, I'm sure, from followers online that you could provide to the customer, to your clients.
On new products, on old products, on products that are discontinued. There was a trend, right, for a while. It's like you asked, we answered. People used to bring back discontinued products. They would say, "Where is X product? That was my favorite product, and now I'm doing this." And so, what's been really great is to be able to have that visibility, to be able to help the brand that way.
What do you wish that clients would know more about when they come to you and want to launch a community?
Uh-huh. I mean, there are a few different things. I think it's what it takes. It's the long game. It's really the
Right.
long game. You're
Because
not
you
gonna get a
can't build it
community overnight.
overnight. You've got to.
No. Yeah. But it's also not all gonna be on social. So to build the most impactful community, it really has to be 360, and that you can have a great social presence, but if the rest of the brand isn't walking the talk or doing all of the things, then there's a risk of it not growing because the community gets frustrated. So that's the ability to do seeding, to work with influencers on any scale. It doesn't have to be huge, but you'll ultimately have influencers coming to you or people wanting to try your product. So how can you have that um, I guess system in place to be able to do the mailings or just to get the product in the hands of the people who could be tastemakers, and then the agility to be able to create campaigns. On the other hand, it's the flexibility and belief in social to be able to test and learn to see what the community wants.
So you really have to have your ears to the ground all the time.
At all times, at all. I mean, the best in class, I think brands do that. I think that they bridge their community online and offline. They're doing a lot of these IRL events. There's a lot of marketing initiatives, a lot of PR initiatives, and people are really bringing their um, their savviness across all touch points. So that if someone might not be on a certain channel, you don't find them there, but you find them somewhere else. So it's not limited.
Okay. What about brands that are they're legacy brands? They've been around for a while. Maybe they don't introduce new products as often. What kind of challenges does that present? And have you ever worked with a brand like that?
Legacy brands have something unique in that they have very loyal fan bases. So it's about capturing those fan bases, making sure that they're engaged, keep them talking, and reigniting their love at all times. Maybe it's through surprise and delights. Maybe it's looking for who has been the most loyal, even like a top customer, and making sure that they're heard, or listening to their feedback about what they love and sharing content that reflects that passion.
It's great. Um, what are some of the tools that you're using to really create a compelling presence for the brand on social? Let's say on Instagram, for example. Are you getting more into is video more and more important to you or
Video is extremely important. So on Instagram Reels, it's Reels and carousels. So Reels are, or everything is becoming, as they say, TikTokified. So that was almost Instagram's solution to TikTok, was Reels and videos, and it's in the same format, the vertical format. And then now also it's carousels. So the ability to share multiple pieces of content in one post. And so we're always diversifying the formats to see what the community engages with most, whether it's trending audios, because now you can add audio, and like, what is that experience from the person who's scrolling on their phone? How do you stop the scroll? How do you
right?
engage them? What is the hook? What makes you then want to share that with someone else? Because for me, the real engagement is through the shares. We just worked with a client that partnered with an influencer that had over 2,000 saves and shares. So to us, we're saying that's incredible. That content really resonated. What is it about that content that works so well that people not only just, double tapped it, but they also shared it with a friend?
That's fantastic. So you
Mhm.
really have to dissect all of the interactions that you get.
Every
And
single one. Again, it's an art and a science. You try your best. You take what you know or you take what you've seen, look at the metrics, look at what works, and try to replicate that, not in a way that's too similar, but replicate it in a way that you think that it will work and engage your community.
do community members like to see behind the scenes kind of things? How cosmetics or skincare products are made, where they come from, what the ingredients are?
I think they like the behind the scenes from the big brands. I think when it's a small brand, you're still trying to get onto their radar. And so first you want to have them know who the brand is and have some aware level of awareness and even like usage. But the bigger the brand, the more curious that the people are about the community, about the ways of working, about how it's made, what it's made, who are the people on the team, who's the person behind the marketing, who's the person who behind the formulations. And I think that social has made brands a lot more human now in terms of the interaction
Sure.
because they're closer. It's one step away. You used to be able to have to call like a 1-800 number and you would get someone not at all related to the brand. And now the brand is essentially part of you, that it's part of your everyday life, and you can contact them, you can have them at your fingertips if you really want.
Yeah, I know for myself when I've used cosmetic brands, even the really small indie kind of brands, I'm always impressed by the way they get back to me and answer my questions and even send additional products, whatever it is to kind of make me into a fan and a follower.
I think it's really important in the beauty industry. Customer service is huge. That's our point of contact with the consumer, and that's also the consumer's expectation. Consumers where they're shopping now is everywhere. You have TikTok made me buy it, and so you have the opportunity to turn someone into a fan follower and a loyal customer just by your interaction.
What happens when something goes wrong? In other words, the brand has a crisis, or there's a product recall. How does your team handle that from a community management perspective?
The first thing we do is we stop and we listen, we pause, we understand what the issue is, we understand what the challenge is. We actually haven't had a product recall, thank goodness, but you stop and you pause and you acknowledge it, but you want to make sure before you acknowledge whatever the issue may be that you have the answers, because there's nothing worse if you see
Right.
something, it will make people spiral because it will make them have more questions. So the more that you can be prepared, or you have a solid plan of what the customer or consumer can do, if let's say, if there was a product recall, where can they send the product, or what is the plan if somebody had exposure or experience, to make sure you've thought through what your answers are, to even acknowledge, to say, we hear you, we're coming back, we want to make sure that you're okay, and to really be as transparent as you can, but come back with the answers, because if you don't have the answers, it
Yeah.
makes it's not a good look on social media.
Yeah. How do your community managers interact with maybe they I don't know if do they interact, I guess should be my question, with executives at different departments of the cosmetic brands that you work with?
Not usually, no. We have points of contact
Okay.
that we are able to interact with, that we engage with, and just to streamline the communication. Otherwise, it gets to be too, I think, disorganized. But we have ways to escalate with our client contacts. So if something happens, if there's a crisis, we already have a plan in place. We know how to contact. Beyond email, we have WhatsApp groups, we have Slack, we have text. Like,
That's great.
social is
Okay.
always on. Like, if something happens, like, we're prepared. When we onboard clients, we start with, we make sure that we have the points of contact. We establish our weekly meetings, and then we also establish more or less the escalation tree and how we should communicate essentially on off hours, because social doesn't sleep. If something happens, and even world events, when world events happen, okay, we saw that X, Y, and Z happened last night. And they'll text us and say, we're pausing, no one pause. Or people will ask us about X donation. We're coming back, we're meeting with corporate communications. We'll let you know in the morning. So then we know, and we can anticipate all the questions that are coming in. For example, about LA fires, who was affected when we had clients in LA? How were people, where were they donating? How could people who wanted to donate, people who, all of the different things that were coming up, and we made sure to partner with our clients that we could help the community.
Right. Well, Mimi, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for joining me. How can people get in touch with you?
People can find me on LinkedIn here, Mimi Banks. They can message me also on Instagram if they want, Mimi Banks. They can follow us on our Instagram, our agency. It's mbsocial.agency.
That's great. All right. Well, thank you again. And everyone else, I'll see you next time on another edition of PR Patter.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much.